the CineSnob Podcast.
Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 331 of the CineSnob Podcast. My name is Cody Villafana, and joining me this week are Kiko Martinez and Jocelyn Durand. It's birthday season here at CineSnob, and Jocelyn was first up. Jocelyn, happy late birthday.
Oh,
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm celebrating all month, so I will take...
Oh, you're that
Yes.
kind
Yeah.
of person. Okay.
Well, for 40, I think you get a month.
That's true.
I'm not usually like that, but
You get all of June, and then Kiko and I get 1 day each because
Yeah.
that's right.
We get 1 day each. We have to
Yeah.
we have to break it up in the
Yeah.
middle.
then it's Kiko, me, and then by 4th of July, nobody cares anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Kiko gets the first half of July, and then Cody gets the second half of July.
Yeah, but it's old
Does that
news
work?
by then.
Yeah.
Like,
All
I'm
my
going to
family's in
celebrate
Ju-
my birthday on July 28th.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yes,
Yeah.
I will allow it.
Old news.
Yeah.
I was born in July, and so was my brother and sister. So
Aw.
we all have a July, and then my wife is in July too. So
man.
we're basically broke in July.
I was about to say that's an expensive month.
Yeah, that is crazy. But yeah, my dad's side of the family is like that in February. There's a bunch of them in February, but not me. I'm the
You're
outlier.
the oddball. You're the black sheep.
That is true.
Well, I didn't
Um,
get a samurai sword, though. So
Did you
that was
really? Is that what you
disappointing.
asked
No.
for?
No, I thought of it way too late.
Yeah,
No.
that'd be a good gift though,
I think
especially
so.
with the little ones around. I'm sure it's a great idea.
Terrible idea.
Yeah. I think since we're a little bit late on this week, we don't have to spend too much time talking about other stuff, as also I forgot to look at the news for movies this week. So I don't think
Don't
I
out
should
yourself.
stall. Yeah, I don't think I should stall anymore. I think we should go ahead and get right in.
I think there isn't any news. I
There
didn't see
isn't?
anything. I don't think so. There was
No.
no movie news this week.
No, I think people were too occupied elsewhere. for the week.
Celebrating my birthday.
Yes. Yes, there were people gathering for it all
They-
across the country.
That's right. They
Yeah.
were.
They
There
threw a
was
parade for you and
parades.
everything.
There was a parade.
Yeah.
It's the saddest parade I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
Yeah, well then, why don't we go ahead and just get right into it.
Here are this week's reviews.
So first up this week, we have How to Train Your Dragon. This is a remake. It's a live action, well, I guess live action hybrid. The dragon's not real, but it's a remake of the 2010 animated film that spawned, I think, a trilogy. Were there 3 of those movies? I don't know. I never
think,
saw
yeah,
any
those
of them.
three. Those three of them.
Yeah, so I actually did not see this movie, but the two of you did. So Kiko, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about this version of How to Train Your Dragon and what you thought of it?
Sure. Well, if you didn't see the original animated film of 2010, it basically follows a Viking, a young Viking who comes across this dragon known as a Night Fury that apparently nobody has ever seen before, and so he's able to befriend this dragon, and of course all the other Vikings in the small town of theirs fear it. So when he brings it into light, he's trying to explain to them that these dragons won't hurt them. So it's all about the relationship between this young Viking and this Night Fury dragon named Toothless. So I have to give DreamWorks credit for not dropping an egg on its first attempt. I'm not saying that I'm going to recommend it, but How to Train Your Dragon is a way better live action remake than the last few Disney remakes that have come out. I would say like the last at least 5 or 6. So, the bar is set pretty low for live action remakes, but at least DreamWorks seem to be trying a little bit for its first one. So I'll start off with what I liked. Any of the aerial shots done very well. I felt the same way with things like the magic carpet ride in the remake of Aladdin, or any of the flying sequences in like the Avatar film. So I thought all those scenes were really immersive and really took you into the movie a lot. So, and I also thought Mason Thames, who plays Hiccup, and Nico Parker as Astrid, they were serviceable as characters themselves. When they're interacting with one another or with Toothless. However, I think it was a lot more serious in tone than it was with the original animation. So I think what the big miss for this new one is, I thought a lot of the humor was lost in the remake. Like the biggest laugh that I had was near the end when the fat Viking rode off on the fat dragon. For some reason,
like
I just like fat
Bumblebee.
animals. So like I have a fat pug downstairs that I just want to get fatter. So when the fat dragon, I like the fat dragon. There was also a fat dragon in that Michelle Rodriguez movie a few years ago. Which one was it? The one where she, it's like a castle movie. It's a era piece. I can't remember what it's called. Well, Dungeons and Dragons. Hello, duh. Okay, so there's a fat dragon in Dungeons and Dragons, guys. Yeah, I thought that was funny. But then even then, like the secondary characters, like that one specifically, I thought they were just bland. It didn't feel like they were an important part of the story like they did in the original. So, and then of course you can't ignore the fact that there's very little difference in the narrative between this one and the first, which automatically makes it pretty derivative. So I know it might be a tired excuse when explaining why this ultimately won't get a recommendation for me, but you really can't avoid that, right? The only way you can in the future is to stop making such safe choices, and get at least a little creative with the storytelling. So yeah, when there's no risk involved in filmmaking, I mean, even changing just a few scenes would probably work. So but when there's no risk, like that's when filmmakers start saying things like, "Oh, we made this for a new generation of moviegoers," and to me, that's just a lazy way of handling, whatever it is that's going to be coming next in the film industry. Because we're going to get a lot more of these, and I just wish they would pivot to a few things that were different than the original, because the original is always going to be there, and I just hope that anytime something like this comes out, that filmmakers are smart enough to, make it for the new generation, but also make it for a whole new audience as well. So that's where I am with How to Train Your Dragon. Jocelyn? Oh, sorry. Did I take your line?
Yeah, you did. Jocelyn.
Thank you.
I said it a little different.
You did.
Read.
A little better, I think.
Thank
That's
you.
why you're the host.
Yes.
No, so I was expecting a children's movie, and I took my kids, and they were very scared through a lot of this movie. It's a 2-hour movie, first of all, which is like insane to me to be a children's movie. I have not seen the original, but I was expecting like something much more children friendly, and this to me was leaning more towards like YA. Like there's some, Viking training camp that they're going through, these young adults. And it felt almost a little Hunger Gamey, like definitely not as violent or as, murdery, but very, very similar in that respect. And so so my kids were like, they spent half the movie really a little too scared. But once it got into, the flying and the dragon and the training and all that, they really started enjoying it. And I liked a lot of it. I liked the performances. I thought Gerard Butler was really good as well as the dad. And I liked that part of the story as far as like, of course, it's very, we've seen this a million times. It's like the son who's trying to convince the father, and the father is too strict and blah, blah, blah. And then he eventually comes around. And it was nice when he eventually came around. I did love that. I was like actually getting a little verklempt, sort of like Lilo and Stitch. It's like I don't have to enjoy a movie for it to touch me. And I don't know, the dragon to me, it was like a cat. Was the dragon that cat-like in the animated movie? Because it's like
Pet-like in general, I think.
Yeah, it was.
I don't know,
very
cat, dog.
feline-y.
Yeah,
it
ferret.
almost reminded me. Yeah, kind of. It reminded me of the cat and Flo a little bit, like.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought the character design was good. It's just like the Stitch. I mean, it
Right.
felt real. It felt
That
like
was
it didn't
great,
feel
yeah.
like
Is
like
there a
something-
reason they called it Toothless? Did I miss that?
There's a part, I can't remember the orial, but I do remember in this one, the dragon opens its mouth and it doesn't have teeth.
Okay, right.
And then he kind of,
was
I guess what's the opposite of retract? They pop out. So.
Oh, okay. Man, I missed that whole thing because.
Yeah. So it looked like he doesn't have teeth, so I think.
Okay, and then they like come out like little switchblades.
Yeah, like that. There you go.
Terrifying.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I thought you're. I think that the relationship basically was what worked for me is Toothless and Hiccup, which aren't really
Yeah.
great names in my opinion. I never liked the Toothless
No,
Hiccup.
they're a little
thing.
silly. And I did like the ending and the whole like reveal at the end was I thought kind of sweet and I don't know though. I'm just kind of like it was fine, as Cody would say. It was fine. That's how I feel about this movie.
Yeah. Well, all right, then let's get into final thoughts and grades. And Kiko, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I think yeah, I was reading some reviews earlier today, and I hate when critics call remakes like this cash grabs. That you always hear that cash grabs. Like, not all potential blockbusters that have ever been made are trying not to make as much money as possible. They're all cash grabs. So I don't know why, for some reason, these specific type movies get that label more than others. So, the studio can make whatever it wants, but I just want them to take more chances. So you have this very creative IP in your hands, and instead of building on that, you think that the fact that it's live action is enough of a difference to do nothing. So I'm giving this a C+ and a strong warning to DreamWorks that after you make another 2 of these, please don't go and make a live action remake of Boss Baby. Please don't do that. So
That sounds basically Look Who's Talking.
right, there you go.
Yeah. Jocelyn, your final thoughts and grade.
Yeah, I totally agree with Kiko. I thought it could have been a lot. I was expecting it to be funnier, less serious, less kind of intense. I wanted to go and have a good time, and instead I was like being met with a lot of peril, which I don't love, especially when I'm going to like a children's movie. So while I ultimately enjoyed the movie, I wouldn't recommend it. So I'm giving it a C+.
All right, then we'll go ahead and move on to our next film, Materialists. This is a film that was written and directed by Celine Song, who kind of made a pretty big splash with her first film, Past Lives, and really impressed with both a great script. She is a playwright, I think, by trade, and in her first movie that she has directed, and this follows that. It is a movie about a young, ambitious New York City matchmaker finding herself torn between the perfect match and her imperfect ex. So basically, Dakota Johnson plays a matchmaker named Lucy, who basically does sort of like high-end matchmaking for, really wealthy people. And you kind of see her interact with clients in sort of pretty generic, I think, talking head scenes for, for like what they're looking for and like how, kind of restrictive they might be being or narrowing the pool or picky or whatever you want to call it. And at a wedding, from one of her matches, she is approached by a character named Harry, played by Pedro Pascal, and it basically, he wants to date her. And then at that same wedding, she runs into her ex, played by Chris Evans, who you found out, they had a previous relationship and that didn't end up working out. And so it ends with Dakota Johnson's character basically being torn between should she go and be with this, really wealthy man played by Pedro Pascal, who she feels at certain times like she's not, I guess, in the same league as, or should she go back to Chris Evans, who she feels like she may be above, and she's sort of torn in these two places. And I've been thinking a lot about this movie since I saw it a week ago today, and it's one of those things where the writing, I think, is the first thing that stands out is kind of feeling off to me about it. I think that Past Lives is such a well-written, incredible movie, and I feel like this movie is overwritten. I think that there is a lot of stuff where I think Celine Song is writing to be like profound and have a lot of commentary on dating and love and stuff like that. And the scenes that are supposed to be played for comedy, I think feel really generic. Like I said, when you're introduced to these people that she's trying to set up. And then I think that there's just a lot of just maybe overwritten scenes and dialogue between these characters. And I think it's delivered in a variety of different ways. I think that Pedro Pascal is, I'm usually like not the biggest Pedro Pascal fan in terms of like his range. I think he does a couple of things really well, but I think here I really like his performance here. I think Chris Evans is fine here for the most part. Dakota Johnson, I don't really know how I feel about her in this movie. I think that she's a very low key actress and doesn't always like emote a bunch.
I call it unacting. She's like an unactor.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think sometimes it works and sometimes it just feels like it's like a phoned in performance in a way. And I don't know that always really works here. The movie above all else is, I think sort of a commentary on the sort of like cutthroat nature of modern dating and expectations that people have, and whether or not people value like checking boxes and finding like the perfect match on paper, where the idea of love almost comes secondary to all of that. And again, I just feel like there's like moments of really brilliant writing, and then there's moments where I think they're just not well kind of fleshed out or polished. I feel like there's also something at the core here, which is this kind of like love triangle where I think Dakota Johnson's character is purposely written to be sort of like, materialistic. She's written to be like very vapid, and so her journey never really feels like relatable or honest to me, in a sense that like, for one, it feels like her character is sort of like selling like bullshit for this matchmaking, but it also feels like her character like believes in it too. And so I feel like I just feel like her sensibilities towards these things and her character design makes it so that the lesson that she ultimately learns feels a little bit unearned. And I feel like this movie gets really hung up on wealth as opposed to other things, in a sense of like, she's fighting herself this whole movie about whether or not she should be with Chris Evans, basically because he's poor. And when you look at like casting a guy like Chris Evans here, we're talking about like Captain America. Like we're talking about like someone who is like literally an aspiring actor with movie star looks, and this thing treats it like she's settling on some kind of like guy who lives in the gutter. Like it's a very strange sort of feeling there, where like this settling is basically with a poor guy, but one who has, again, like who looks like Chris Evans and doesn't really have more than one quality, it feels like, that would be like discounted by a matchmaker. So I don't know that part, nor does, and I think like some of its like elite status pieces also make this thing feel like it's not as relatable. Like I don't know that like, because it is a matchmaker, a high-end matchmaker, and they're talking a lot about wealth, I feel like it's speaking to a very small portion of maybe like the single population, where I feel like maybe people don't have this relatable of an experience because of the sort of like, maybe people are not in that sort of like wealthy dating pool to feel universal. So yeah, I think I think that, those things plus, I think there are a couple of plot lines, specifically a plot line with Pedro Pascal. I don't want to spoil it because it is treated as a reveal in the movie, but it's just a really kind of dumb storyline that I didn't really appreciate very much. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this thing just feels like it's not as profound or smart or clever or funny or romantic or any of it than I think it is intending to be. So I just found myself really feeling disappointed by it. I don't know that its themes about, true love winning over, like material status or material items really hits, because I think its characters are so sort of one-dimensional here. Another thing too, also, before I forget, I also feel like this movie needs to spend more time with Dakota Johnson and Chris Evans as a couple before they meet, because I feel like you don't have nearly enough context to understand that relationship and why like their true bond with one another and why they might have like that sense of true love, because you get like one flashback scene and then the rest of it is basically happening in present time. And I feel like that push and pull that Dakota Johnson's character is feeling would feel way more strong if we had like any level of other context for that relationship aside from the one flashback that it does. So that I think is another issue within the script. So I will stop talking and I will turn over to Jocelyn for your thoughts on Materialists.
Okay. Here is the better movie, okay? Chris Evans and Dakota Johnson were married previously, and he died, right?
Wait. Were you disappointed? Just real quick, were you disappointed that he wasn't a ghost?
Of course. So for the listeners who don't know, I saw the trailer, thought Chris Evans was dead. That's what I thought the movie was going to be about. And I think it would have been a much better movie if it had been like she had been married to someone for love first. And that would explain why she's so obsessed with like money and marrying for money. Do you know what I mean? Like almost like she's gotten burned because she did it before for love. It would have made so much more sense to me if she had been with Chris before. Something happened, whatever. She'll never do that again. She'll never, marry for love. Now she's obsessed with marrying Pedro for being rich or whatever. And then that could have led to a whole different, set of complications. And that would have been so much more interesting to me. I really disliked this movie a lot. Not just because Chris Evans wasn't dead and I was wrong, but because what Cody was saying about her being so vapid and materialistic, like it made no sense. And again, going back to my original idea, it would have made more sense if she had a reason, if something traumatic had happened and that's why she's like this, other than her just being like this kind of really shitty, shallow person, And oh my God, I hated. I'm okay. I'm not gonna say hated. I disliked the dialogue a ton. Like, I thought it was so stilted and unrealistic. And then halfway through, I was like, Cody, I want to leave. Like, I hate this movie. And he was like, no, Jocelyn, you have to wait for at least the twist. And I guessed, I was like, is the twist this? And he was like, yes. And I said, no, Cody, that's not the twist. And he was like, Jocelyn, that's the twist. And I was like, don't fuck with me, Cody. That can't be the twist. And it was. And I can't describe how stupid that quote-unquote twist is, in my opinion. I mean, the fact that I even guessed it because there's one thing said at the beginning of the movie, like that's not creative, screenplay writing. That is literally like Chekhov's cosmetic surgery in this goddamn terrible movie. I hated it. And I heard one podcaster describe the interviews when they're trying to weed out potential dates, whatever, as like Nora Ephron-esque. I'm like, it was a direct ripoff of Harry Met Sally. Like, there is no Nora Ephron-esque about it. It is literally just redoing Harry Met Sally with these interviews, but instead of like old couples talking about it, it's just like people talking about what they want on a date. Anyway, I could go on and on. I really, really, really disliked this movie.
All right. And Kiko.
Man, we're all being a bunch of little snobs this week, aren't we? So yeah, I'm getting a kick out of all these mainstream moviegoers, and I won't, most of them are female because this is set up as a romantic comedy, right?
Right.
And they're really upset that
weird.
this wasn't something like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days or some bullshit Jennifer Lopez wedding planner movie. So I love watching these TikToks of like a girls' night out and they come out like, what the fuck did I just watch, right?
Oh, sorry, I hate to say that.
Yeah.
A lady leaving the theater, I heard her and I texted to Cody. She said something like, I just don't know what to think about that.
That's about right.
I just
That's
had to
about
say
right.
that.
So I think Celine's song, she touches on these themes that are thought provoking. I think they're unique to the genre, so I'll give her that. But I also think that this was one of the most unromantic romantic comedies I've seen in a long time. Right, so like right away I turned to my wife, and as they're getting deeper into Dakota Johnson's character, and I was like, oh, she's a terrible human being, right? And we're just laughing about that. And later on, she admits to that, right? Basically, so I felt good because I was right about that. Cody brought something up. I hate to compare this film to Celine's first movie, Past Lives, because that one is so much better in every way possible. But the one thing that I thought both of them were lacking was a stronger foundation between the two characters that were in love, who have some sort of past with one another. So that reminded me of in Past Lives. I wanted to see more of the kids' relationship before they were split up, so that when they were united, it would hit harder. And that's the same thing I felt with the Cody Johnson and Chris Evans characters. So show me something to get me on board with this relationship, and maybe I would have believed it. But all we get is a fight in traffic, and then when they reunite, I didn't know what was really making me invested in the idea that this, relationship comes with more than just like trivial baggage. So again, the social commentary, kind of like on the economics of dating, I thought was kind of interesting. But again, a lot of the dialogue used to explain, each other's philosophies on love and relationships and what a person should bring to the table felt, and I wrote it down too, overwritten a lot of the time. It just didn't feel like two real people talking about something. So and then I'll go ahead.
Do you feel like it's sort of like this, like the playwright and Celine song comes out in this script, but maybe not in the best way?
Yeah, no, exactly. Even told my wife this. I was like, there's some directors or writers, screenwriters that the precision of the dialogue sometimes works, like in A Social Network. Like that's very, very precisely written, right?
Or Aaron Sorkin or something.
Right, an Aaron Sorkin type thing. And it sometimes it works and just sometimes it doesn't. Like I'm always reminded of Juno, even though I like that movie and I would recommend it. There's just some scenes of that movie that just don't feel like anybody talks like that. So yeah, I think Celine, I mean, you didn't see any of that in Past Lives. Everything felt real.
Not really.
Everything felt grounded. And this, it felt, kind of just like artificial.
Yeah.
So, we have to talk about the pseudo twist at the end, which I won't go into. And of course, it involves a surgery. But I had a whole 2 days to think about it, and I just came down to the fact that it's just a ridiculous plot point that did not need any. You did not need to have that. That storyline. So, not to mention
some of us found it downright insulting, but let's.
Yeah. Not to mention the way the film ends. So you're building up these characterizations for the entire movie and then want us to think that Dakota Johnson's character is going to change in the blink of an eye and now everything's happy-go-lucky. So I felt like they tried to wrap it up in this nice little bow, even though that's not really what this movie is, right? I don't think that's what, it would have been a Jennifer Lopez movie. So
it was being set up as this more sort of dramatic and sort of quirky, and then it turned into I guess a rom-com. But
so it really felt like the director like backed herself up into a corner and didn't know where to go. That's what I felt at the end. Although I did really like the closing credit scene a lot. I mean, it's just the credits rolling and it's one scene. I thought that brought it back to reality again a little bit. So
I'd like to add one more thing in here that I remember that nobody brought up. That is just that I think the other part that really, again, did not sit well with me is that I think this movie has some pretty wild tonal shifts in it, where it goes from being like rom-com to romance to like straight into Dramaville with a plot point that happens with a match that she ends up making that is kind of the turning point for the character to kind of realize sort of the, like what she's doing or the role that she's playing in certain things. And for me, that swing, it goes back and forth and it just feels very, it feels a little bit disruptive to me. I don't think
a little manipulative, I think, as well.
Maybe. Yeah, I think yeah.
Like to throw something that serious into this movie, it just seems a little not just out of place, but a little like I don't know, just like a weird thing to bring up in this movie where everyone's just kind of, I don't know.
And just on another point, I mean, if you think about just think about the future of these two characters, like it's not going to work, right? Is it? Like, how do you?
Well, I don't know. It's because it's whether or not you buy into the journey of Dakota Johnson being a changed person, and I don't.
Or him also. I mean, making all these rapid fire promises.
At the end, I'm gonna do. Yeah, I hated that.
Yeah, which I mean, like literally, like let me just fix everything really quickly in my movie because this doesn't make any sense. That's literally that scene.
Yeah. So we'll get into final thoughts and grades. And for me, it's a movie that the more I sit with it, the more I don't like it. And I think it's a disappointment because I feel like I think I said it on the show last time. Past Lives is probably my favorite movie of the last 5 years. I think it's a really incredible movie. And the one thing I kept thinking when I was thinking about this movie and after I walked away was this movie feels like Celine Song's first movie. This feels like a first script, a first movie where you can see the potential there, but it's not quite there. Whereas Past Lives feels like the one that's oh, this is someone who has finally found their voice and figured it out. And I feel like these movies feel reversed, where this feels like the first film that has a couple of things where you can see the potential in it, but just doesn't quite get there. And yeah, I mean, I think that it just doesn't feel relatable. I don't feel like, I've seen a lot of people call the movie soulful and emotional and heartwarming, and I don't get any of that from this. I think that its character is fundamentally flawed in a way that doesn't allow for any level of relatability or believability in the character's arc. And I feel like that is ends up kind of sinking the whole movie. So yeah, I was really not into it. I'm gonna have to give it a C. Jocelyn, your final thoughts and your grade.
No, I just wanted to point out that there is an Easter egg. Celine Song was the director of the play. That. Did you see that? They made it very prominent over his shoulder.
Wait, tell me, what was it?
When Chris Evans' character is performing his play that they go to, there's a poster outside for it,
framed right over his shoulder,
says,
and it's directed by, or
I think
a play by Celine Song
wrote.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
In which I was just kind of rolling my eyes about because I feel like that's just another example of, I think that she really thought she was doing something with this and it really just doesn't land at all. And I gotta say, I thought I loved Past Lives, but I really did think that it was a little reductive of an Annie Hall, and I feel like this is kind of the version of When Harry Met Sally or something. And I don't know, I'm interested to see what will be next because I think that right now both movies I've seen, although Past Lives was done so well, it really felt almost like just a remake of an old movie that I loved, and maybe this one wasn't as successful, so I guess we'll see what happens next, but I don't think it can get worse than this. I think anything would be an improvement from this movie. I really, really disliked it. I gave it a C-.
And Kiko.
Yeah, just overall, I think it was a very inconsistent romance. It tried to, make it work with some social commentary about modern dating, but I thought it fell short emotionally because it didn't do the work to get me on board for the most important relationship of the film, which was Captain America and the woman from 50 Shades of Grey.
Madam X.
So, there you go. And I'm giving this a C.
All right. So we will get into our final film, The Life of Chuck. The Life of Chuck is a film written and directed by Mike Flanagan, and it is the adaptation of a Stephen King novella. If you know anything about Mike Flanagan, he is no stranger to Stephen King. He adapted a couple of things very successfully. I say very successfully. They're good movies. I haven't read the source material, but he made Gerald's Game, which was his first foray into King, and then he made Dr. Sleep, the sequel to The Shining, a movie that I think is awesome. Dr. Sleep is really great in a way that weirdly makes The Shining better. That's really hard to do, but and I think he's adapting and making a Carrie TV show soon. So he's and he's had a bunch of projects that he's had the rights to, but hasn't played out. So he's become like the go-to authority on Stephen King. And this is a movie that is, I'm going to read you the synopsis. And I think we're going to have to talk around the movie a little bit because the plot, I think, is best enjoyed cold. But it is described as a life-affirming, genre-bending story based on Stephen King's novella about 3 chapters in the life of an ordinary man named Charles Krantz. I think we can be a little bit more detailed on that. The movie is it takes place in reverse chronological order, so it's a 3-act movie that starts with Act 3, then 2, then 1, and basically tells the story of the life of Chuck. The movie starts off in one place, which is sort of like an end of the world doomsday kind of scenario. And I think my sort of thoughts on the movie basically depend on how the sort of acts play. And this is a kind of end of the world story that has like a teacher that's played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, who starts to notice a bunch of things happening around him, and connects with his ex, played by Karen Gillan, and they basically kind of ponder the end of the world together. And it's a really cool first act of a movie, and then acts 2 and 3 sort of shift perspective and kind of bring you an entirely different take on what you thought that you were watching, I think. And I think that's about as far as we'll go with it. And so it really ends up being the story of this man. And I think that God, I'm trying so hard to talk around the plot of this movie, but it really comes down to, so Charles Krantz, played by Tom Hiddleston, you get to see him throughout various, I would say, like big or important moments of his life, as you start to kind of reveal a little bit more about, where he is in Act 3 and how he got there, and the sort of values that he put on life and living, and you see, formative years. And it goes into Act 2, which is basically a scene that takes place over a day. And I think Act 2 is really great. I mean, I think it's got a big set piece in it. I think that it has the big reveal of like what's really going on here. It starts to set up some of the themes about, everything about this movie in terms of its marketing and its sort of even synopsis describes it as life affirming. And you're like, okay, I start to see this a little bit. Act 3 then rolls around where you get to see Chuck as a kid. And this is where the movie, I think, lays a little bit of an egg for me, because it's sort of, it in a weird way, sort of like rehashes certain elements of Act 2, in that like there's a lot of dancing involved in this movie and in this act, and it shows you these kind of formative things that he experiences as a child, but I'm not sure that any of it really pays off the emotion of him as an adult. And I think in particular, the movie sort of ends with this sort of notion of the way that this character is going to, or plans to, approach his life, and the way he wants to live his life. And it's like it's meant to be like a really profound statement that literally ends the movie. And my problem with it is that if you go in this sort of chronological order, the only thing that we see from this character, basically, after the fact, save for a couple of brief moments in the first act of the movie, is this one day that happens where he dances in the middle of the street, and that's the only context we have for the life of Chuck. And I feel like the movie just does not really connect with its themes, because I feel like there's not enough meat on the bone of understanding of who this character is. We only really see this character as a kid, and then we see him a couple of times in very brief moments, albeit as for the rest of his life as an adult. And I just don't know that there's enough there. I don't think that third act is strong enough to really believe in it. I don't know that third act is strong enough to keep that emotional tie and emotional pull. So I really like this movie where it's setting up. I really like the sort of turn of it. I really like the first 2 acts of the movie. The third one doesn't really leave me feeling too much, and that's where most of the movie takes place, unfortunately. So it's a mixed bag for me at the end of the day. So Kiko, your thoughts on The Life of Chuck?
Yeah, I really like this film a whole lot, and I want to say I loved it, but I want to see it at least one more time before I ask it to marry me or anything. So I love the message of like human connection that it delivers, and how it really brings home this idea of how everyone is made up of like different traits that you've adopted from everybody that you've come across in your life. So that resonated with me a lot. So as did all the sentimental family moments, which only tend to work on me if they don't feel like they're placating to the audience. And with this movie, I found it to be like one of the most earnest things I've seen in a long time. Like, it's so touching that none of it felt like saccharine to me. So I loved the narration in this. Nick Offerman is the narrator in some of this movie. It reminded me of the narration in another Stephen King adapted film, which was Stand By Me, which I thought was very effective. So
Narration is very good.
Narration is really difficult in a narrative film, in my opinion. But I thought the director Mike Flanagan he made it work. So, and then I thought the mystery and the sci-fi and the drama, all these different genres really meshed well with one another. It starts off, of course, with the sci-fi elements, and just the way that chapter ends was just like really like fascinating to me, and just like really made me sad. Like, emotionally, it takes a lot for me to cry at a theater, but this one got me for like every single chapter. The end of the first chapter got me, the end of the second, and then definitely the end of the third. So I just I found a lot of it just to be very profound in a way that that I just couldn't stop thinking about it, and I still can't. And that's why I'd love to. I'm gonna recommend this, but I just want to see it one more time, just to kind of break it down a little bit more, I guess, for me, because I think that it's going to come down to how much you read into it as a individual.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think everybody's going to pull something out of it that's different than the next person, and I think that that's really beautiful. So sometimes, I mean, I guess it's not going to resonate with some people. That's fine, but just depending, I guess, where you are in your life, maybe, or like, if you're a parent, or if you're not, or if you've been 100 relationships or just one, or you're a lonely person, or you're introvert, extrovert, it's going to hit a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. So I think that that's where I am with the Life of Chuck. It life affirming. I mean, I don't know. It just it makes you. What's the? I don't think I've ever seen a movie that made me feel so important on the human side of things, and then so small on the universal side of things, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I was touched by it completely. So that's right.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying about sort of like the sort of like being an amalgamation of all the people that you've like run into or interacted with.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I just wish there was more of it. I wish there was one more chapter of this that covered him and at like another point of his life, because I really don't think, because I think that like I think the sort of like influence that other people had on him feels somewhat abstract, the way that it's presented, because I feel like there's only so much of it you see that's direct.
Yeah, I mean, it's all dance, right? I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. Is his grandmother gave him that gift or that love of that,
right?
Even though he didn't pursue that in real life.
But that's the thing. It's like it presumably highlights the one day where it influenced him.
Yeah, I think though it was a 6-minute dance scene. I mean, I think it was that long. I was fine with just seeing him as an adult, and I mean, those are other. Let's not make it seem like that's the only thing that we saw him as an adult. I mean, it is.
It is. What are you talking about? It is.
Well, I mean, he there's scenes with the wife, and then there's also.
We're talking glimpses.
Yeah, there's glimpses in other places. But I was fine with that. I mean, if you're gonna, I think, see, again, I'm reading way too much. I'm gonna let Jocelyn go, because I mean, for me, like,
she didn't see it.
Oh, you didn't see it? Oh my goodness!
You can't be the tiebreaker this week.
You can't be the tiebreaker.
I was too busy celebrating.
Yeah, no. You have to see this movie, though. I mean, Cody thinks there's a 2/3 of a good movie here. I think all of it is really, really great. And
you had me at feeling large as a person and small on a universe scale. That was a great line. I was just like, wow, I want to see it now.
So yeah, I mean, the dancing stuff, I mean, okay, so you break down your whole life into little chapters or little glimpses of what you remember, or, think of yourself on your deathbed, and what are you going to remember before you die? And if that's the one day that he remembers, I think that was a pretty good life in terms of like changing people's. I mean,
you lost me on this.
It was a small moment in his life, but it kind of like it made an impact on everybody around him in that day. Like it was a big.
But you don't get. I just don't think that it like. I don't think that it fleshes out a character in that moment. I feel like it shows you a little bit of him, and I feel like you get the rest of it in that third act that feels like underwhelming to me. Again, if there was one more chapter in here that gave me anything more about him between chapters 3 and 2, if we're talking about like the chronology of all of this, I would have, like, again, a chapter about him pursuing dance and then realizing that there was nothing, or just like something that kind of ties this character together. That, because really, Tom Hiddleston is like barely in this movie, and in the movie, and so it's about the life of Chuck, not like a day in the life of Chuck.
But Chuck is in this movie. It's about Chuck. It's not about grown up. Chuck.
I get that, but the pivotal moment in his life happens at the pivotal moment that makes the messaging of the movie happens at literally the last like minute of the movie. And then again, if we're talking about chronological order, we see very little of his life after that moment. And that is like the idea is that like it changed the way he lived his life, but we don't really see that. We don't see how it changed it, or him living in the way that he pronounces he's going to. I just don't think that piece of it is there.
Did you like the twist?
Yeah. I love the first 2 acts. And are you talking about
the final twist at the end? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think again, I like the idea of it, and I don't have a problem with it in the movie. I just don't know that twist. Again, I don't think that we see the ramifications of that enough to make it feel profound.
I think we don't have to dance around. We don't have to dance around this part too much. But I won't go into the twist, of course. But there's the mystery. Part of the mystery of the movie is that there's this room in the house that kid Chuck is not allowed to go into. Mm-hmm. So by the end of the film, you realize why he can't go into it, or why his grandfather doesn't want him go into it. So, so when that happens and you realize that, that was.
And by the way, I want to also point out here that I'm talking about like my frustrations with it are because I think that it could have been great and I think it's still good. I'm not complaining about this movie as if I thought it was bad. I just feel like it had potential to be a lot better than it ended up being for me. So we'll get into that with final thoughts and grades. Like, again, I really like the first 2 acts of the movie. I really like the setup. I think that I'm a big fan of Mike Flanagan as is. I think almost everything I've ever seen from him has been great. Like even his like, I haven't seen Kiko. I think he got on your radar because he made that Ouija movie that you really liked, right?
Well, I mean, when you make a pretty good movie about a Ouija board and it's actually interesting, you're like, wait, this guy's talented.
Yeah, well, and he made a movie that same year called Hush. Did you ever see that one?
That sounds familiar. I don't think I saw that one though.
Yeah, that does sound familiar.
Wait, which one is Hush? Is that the one?
His wife is in it, but it's about the like a woman who's like deaf and mute, and someone breaks into her house, but she doesn't know because she's deaf, and then
like that Audrey Hepburn movie.
Oh, it's like that other one with that one. It was the blind guy though. Blink Twice? No, not Blink Twice.
No, it's I can't remember the name of it.
It's with the guy from Avatar.
Yeah. Anyway,
and he did Gerald's Game too, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
He did Gerald's Game.
Yeah, and then he's done like TV like Haunting of Hill House and Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, House in the Fall of Usher. He's super talented. Again, Dr. Sleep, amazing. Here, I feel like maybe he falls victim to the structure of the King source material, where maybe my problem is with the source material and not with the movie. But I think it takes a really great idea and I think kind of lays an egg in the third act. So for me, this is a good movie that I think was trending great. I end up giving it a B. Kiko, your final thoughts and grade?
Yeah, so I think Mike Flanagan, he explores life and death in such a touching and fascinating way, and I think he allowed the audiences to come to their own conclusions about how the universe impacts individuals and vice versa. So there is a lot to unpack in this film if you allow it to, especially in the first act. I don't think I even quite understood the full first act and how some of the things are happening.
Yeah.
But that didn't really
That's why
bother me.
you need to see it again.
Well, no, I guess so. I want to see it again because with something that I like this much, I want to make sure that I wasn't in like this like weird zone where, you know what I mean? It's just kind of weird. But anyway, I think it all comes down to how much you read into it individually. And I read into it a lot more than I probably should have. I'm giving this a B+, with the side note that I want to watch it again. And I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up in my top 10 at the end of the year.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this week. Next week, we have a couple of theatrical releases. We have 28 Years Later, a movie that is a sequel to 28 Days Later, and what's the other one called? 28
Weeks Later.
Weeks.
Days and then weeks and then years.
Gotcha.
No months.
So I haven't seen any of these movies, but
oh really? What?
Yeah.
What?
Wow.
You've
Yep.
never seen 28 Days Later?
There's
That's
there's a
Cillian
scene in the
Murphy's,
second one.
like,
There's a scene in the second one that I love, just the cinematography of the zombies running down the hill after the guy. I take a picture of that, and it's beautiful.
I will
I
watch.
know I've seen the second one. I just remember, the first one is like when Cillian Murphy became like a star.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will watch them this week. I am interested in seeing them. It's just been a blind spot for me.
I'll see the second one with you.
Yeah. The first one came out when I was like 14.
Yeah, you were
Good
too
Lord.
young.
So, yeah. But
See,
and
I
then,
was like, what, 4 years older than that? So I was like 18. It was perfect.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's in the wheelhouse right
prime,
there.
Prime zombie age.
We also have Elio, which is the new it's Pixar, right? Elio's Pixar. I don't want to misquote it, and if it's just Disney, but I believe it's Pixar. Yeah, it's Pixar. So, if anyone's been listening to this podcast for a while, me and Jared have been sort of lamenting the sort of slump of Pixar, where it feels like they haven't made a really good movie in quite some time. And I don't even. I've seen a trailer for Elio. I don't know anything about it. I don't think it really has all that much buzz. So we'll kind of see what happens there. But those are the two big movies. We might have a third if we have some time. But if you want to reach us, you can find us at CineSnob on all social media. You can also follow us on or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Kiko, anything good? I know you have an interview with Mike Flanagan on our YouTube channel. Anything else that you have coming up?
Yeah, I got a chance to interview Mike Flanagan for The Life of Chuck, so check that out. And then we also have very short interviews with Orlando Bloom and Bryce Dallas Howard for the Prime Video crime caper Deep Cover. So check those out and more at cinesnob.net.
All right. And I think that's going to do it for this week. So thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the CineSnob Podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit cinesnob.net. See you next week.